The words still echo in my mind, sharp and cold like broken glass. Old and pathetic. That's what my daughter called me. My own flesh and blood, the little girl I carried for 9 months, the one whose first steps I cheered, whose tears I wiped away, whose dreams I once lived for. Now, she looked at me like I was something to be pitied, or worse, something to be ashamed of. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that used to be full of laughter and the smell of roasted chicken in the oven. But that day, my house felt empty. Too quiet. I had just finished sweeping the living room when I heard the front door slam. "Mom." Ava's voice rang out, impatient as ever. She was 26 now, tall, confident, always dressed like she had somewhere important to be. Her dark hair was tied in a sleek ponytail, her phone glued to her hand as usual. "Yes, sweetheart." I smiled, wiping my hands on a towel as I stepped out of the kitchen. She rolled her eyes. "Please don't call me sweetheart. I'm not 5. I froze for a moment. It was such a small thing, but it cut deep. I had always called her that through scraped knees, heartbreaks, and school achievements. But now, even a term of affection seemed to annoy her. "All right," I said softly. "Ava, it is." She sighed and dropped her bag on the couch. "Listen, I need to talk to you about something. And before you get emotional, please just hear me out." My heart quickened. "Okay, I think it's time you stopped trying to, do things that don't suit you anymore." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She glanced at me, her perfectly shaped eyebrows lifting slightly. "Mom, you're 60. You shouldn't be trying to start a YouTube channel or wear bright red lipstick or whatever it is you're doing on social media. It's embarrassing." My breath caught in my throat. I had started posting short videos, little moments from my garden, cooking recipes, some motivational quotes. Nothing fancy, just something to keep me busy after retirement. I had even gotten a few sweet comments from other women my age, messages like "You inspire me to smile again" and "Thank you for reminding me life doesn't end at 50. But now, my daughter, my own daughter, thought it was pathetic. "Ava," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I only do it because it makes me happy. It keeps me connected. You know how lonely it gets since your father left." "Mom," she interrupted sharply, "that's exactly what I mean. You need to move on. Stop clinging to this weird idea that you can inspire people. You're not an influencer. You're old. People are just laughing at you." I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding painfully in my chest. She gathered her bag, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe I didn't already understand. "Honestly, it's sad. I came here because Daniel and I are planning our wedding next year, and I wanted to talk to you about what role you'll play. But after seeing your latest video, I'm reconsidering if I even want people knowing you're my mom." That last sentence, it crushed me. She turned to leave, but I stopped her. "Ava." She looked back, impatiently. "I may be old," I said slowly, "but I'm not pathetic. You'll see that soon enough." She scoffed. "Sure, Mom. Whatever helps you sleep at night." Then she was gone. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed was unbearable. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every word she said played over and over in my head. Old. Pathetic. Embarrassing. I sat in bed, staring at my reflection in the dark window. Wrinkles lined my face. My hair, once thick and chestnut, was streaked with silver. But my eyes were still the same. The same fire that got me through poverty, through heartbreak, through years of raising Ava alone when her father walked out. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was living in the past, trying to matter in a world that had already moved on. But deep down, something inside me stirred. A quiet, defiant voice whispered, "She doesn't get to decide when you're done living." The next morning, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my desk. My laptop blinked with notifications, messages from kind strangers who liked my videos, encouraging me to keep posting. One comment stood out, "You remind me of my late mom. Please don't stop sharing. You give people like me hope." I stared at that message for a long time, tears filling my eyes. Maybe I wasn't as irrelevant as my daughter thought. That day, instead of deleting my account like she expected, I did something different. I made a new plan. If Ava thought I was old and pathetic, I'd prove her wrong, not by arguing, not by shouting, but by becoming someone she couldn't ignore. For weeks, I poured myself into learning everything I could about content creation. I watched tutorials, read blogs, and practiced video editing. I bought a small tripod with my savings and turned my living room into a makeshift studio. At first, I stumbled. My lighting was terrible. My voice trembled. The videos got maybe 10 views, mostly from bots, I suspected. But I didn't give up. Every night, after dinner, I'd sit in front of the camera and talk honestly about life, about loneliness, about getting older, about finding beauty in everyday things. No filters, no fake smiles. Just truth. And slowly, something started to happen. A few people shared my videos. Comments began pouring in, real people, from all over the world. Women in their 50s, widows, single mothers, even young girls saying they found comfort in my words. One video, titled "You're Never Too Old to Begin Again," suddenly went viral. Overnight, my account gained thousands of followers. I stared at the numbers, disbelief flooding through me. My inbox was full of collaboration requests and interviews. Someone even invited me to speak at a women's empowerment event in Nairobi. I couldn't believe it. For the first time in years, I felt alive again. But deep down, I knew Ava wouldn't be happy when she found out. A week later, she called. "Mom," she said, her tone sharp. "Why are people tagging me on your videos? I told you to stop embarrassing yourself." I took a deep breath. "Ava, I'm not embarrassing anyone. I'm helping people." She laughed bitterly. "Helping people? By posting your sad little speeches? Mom, this is ridiculous. You're becoming a meme." Her words hit hard, but I didn't let them sink in this time. "Maybe so," I said calmly, "but I'd rather be a meme than be someone too afraid to live." There was a long silence. Then she snapped, "You're ruining my reputation, Mom. Daniel's friends are laughing about you." That's when I felt something inside me break, not sadness, but resolve. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said quietly. "But I won't stop. You can either be proud of me, or not. That's your choice." And for the first time ever, I ended the call. That night, I sat in my garden, the cool breeze brushing my face. The moonlight shimmered on the leaves, and I realized something important. Ava didn't hate me. She just didn't understand me. She was afraid of aging, of becoming what she thought I represented, forgotten, invisible. But she was wrong. I wasn't invisible. I was just getting started. The following month felt like a dream, or maybe a storm. My small videos grew faster than I could keep track. Brands began reaching out for collaborations. I even received an email from a local talk show inviting me for an interview about embracing life after 60. I laughed when I read it. Me? On television? Just a few weeks ago, my daughter told me to quit before I embarrassed her. Now, people wanted to hear my story. Still, I hesitated. I could almost hear Ava's voice in my head. "Don't make a fool of yourself, Mom." But that voice, her voice, didn't control me anymore. So I said yes. On the morning of the interview, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my simple blue dress. My hands trembled a little, but not from fear, from excitement. When I arrived at the studio, the host, a warm woman named Lillian, greeted me with a smile. "I'm so glad you agreed to come," she said, shaking my hand. "Your story has touched so many hearts. You're inspiring thousands." The show went beautifully. We talked about loneliness, rediscovery, and how society tends to erase women once they cross 50. I spoke from my heart, every word honest and unfiltered. By the time I got home, the episode had already gone viral online. Comments flooded in love, gratitude, encouragement. But not from Ava. Instead, that evening, she showed up at my door, her eyes blazing. "Are you trying to humiliate me?" she demanded before I could even speak. I blinked. "What? Do you have any idea what people are saying? Daniel's family saw that interview. My friends keep tagging me in your posts like you're some kind of influencer grandma." I sighed softly. "Ava, I didn't do this to upset you. I did it for myself. And for other women like me." She crossed her arms, glaring at me. You should have thought about how it affects me. I stared at her, the little girl who once hugged my legs whenever she was scared, who used to whisper, "You're the best mom in the world." Now she stood there, full of anger and shame, as if being my daughter was a burden. "You know what's funny?" I said quietly. "I spent years doing everything for you. I gave up my dreams so you could chase yours. And now that I'm finally doing something for myself, you're embarrassed." Her lips tightened. "You're twisting this." "I'm just saying, no, Ava." My voice rose, calm but firm. "You're saying that my happiness depends on your approval. And it doesn't. Not anymore." For a moment, silence filled the air. She looked at me, truly looked at me, and something in her expression faltered. Then she turned away. "I don't have time for this," she muttered, grabbing her purse. "When you realize how ridiculous this is, call me." And just like that, she was gone again. That night, I cried, but only a little. Not from pain this time, but from release. I was done begging for her understanding. Instead, I poured my emotions into something new. My followers had started asking for longer talks, live sessions. So I decided to host a live event, Rewriting Life After 60. I rented a small community hall using the little money I'd earned from my first brand deal. It wasn't much, but I wanted to meet the women who'd been writing to me, the ones who said my words gave them hope. When the day came, I expected maybe 20 people. But when I arrived, the hall was packed, nearly 100 women of all ages, some with tears in their eyes, waiting to meet me. They hugged me, shared their stories of heartbreak, loss, betrayal, and starting over. In that moment, I realized something beautiful. I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was helping others rebuild theirs. After the event, a young journalist approached me. "Mrs. Daniels," she said, "no one had called me that in years. There's something powerful about what you're doing. Would you consider writing a book about your journey?" I hesitated. "A book? I've never written anything more than grocery lists." She smiled. "Then this will be your first." It felt impossible, but something inside me sparked again. That night, I began writing. Each page carried pieces of my life, the pain of losing my marriage, the loneliness of empty halls, the sting of my daughter's rejection, and the quiet triumph of rediscovering myself. I titled it Still Blooming. 3 months later, my book was published through a small but passionate publisher. To my shock, it sold out its first print run within a week. The story resonated far and wide, especially among women who had been told they were too old to matter. My inbox overflowed with messages, invitations to speak, partnerships, and even sponsorships. I felt unstoppable. But success has a strange way of bringing people back, especially those who doubted you. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I heard a knock. I opened the door, and there she was. Ava. She looked different. Exhausted. Her makeup was smudged, her tone uncertain. "Mom," she said softly. "Can I come in?" I nodded, stepping aside. She sat at the dining table, glancing around as if it were unfamiliar. Maybe it was, she hadn't been home in months. "I read your book," she began quietly. "Oh," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It was good. Really good." She looked down. "Everyone's talking about it at work. My boss said you were brave. Some of my friends said their moms loved it." I said nothing, waiting. She took a deep breath. "I guess I didn't realize how much I hurt you. When I said those things about being old and pathetic, I didn't mean." Her voice cracked. "I was scared, Mom. Scared of seeing you move on when I felt stuck. Scared that you'd outgrow me." My heart softened instantly. For all her sharpness, Ava was still my daughter. Still that little girl, trying to understand the world. "I didn't write the book to make you feel bad," I said gently. "I just needed to tell my story. For me." She nodded, eyes glistening. "I know. I miss you." Tears welled up in my eyes. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Then come home sometimes. I never stopped wanting you here." She smiled weakly. "I'd like that." For a moment, it felt like the years melted away, like we were finding each other again. But peace, as I've learned, never lasts long. 2 weeks later, while scrolling through my notifications, I stumbled upon a video clip posted anonymously on a gossip page. It was me, crying in the dressing room of the talk show, moments before going on air. The caption read, "Viral grandma has breakdown before her interview, maybe she is too old for this." The video had been edited cruelly, making it look like I was unstable. My heart dropped. I knew exactly who had filmed it. Ava had been with me that day, backstage, helping with my makeup. My hands shook as I called her. "Ava, did you share that video?" She hesitated. "Mom, it's not what you think." "Oh my God, Ava. How could you?" "Listen, I didn't mean for it to go viral. I just sent it to one friend." "I swear." "One friend?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "You humiliated me again, after everything. I thought people would see how much pressure you were under." "It wasn't." "Stop." My voice turned cold. "You've done enough." I ended the call before she could speak again. The betrayal burned deeper than before, not because of the video itself, but because I had let myself believe she'd changed. That night, I sat by the window, staring at the moonlight reflecting on the quiet street. For the first time, I didn't cry. Instead, I whispered to myself, she may have broken my heart, but she won't break my spirit. And with that, I made another decision, one that would change everything. If Ava wanted to see what old and pathetic could do, she was about to find out. After that phone call, I sat in the stillness of my living room, the glow of the streetlight stretching across the floor like a line I couldn't cross back over. Ava's betrayal stung deeper than any wound I'd ever known. Not because of the video itself, humiliation fades, but because I had dared to hope she finally saw me. That night, I didn't sleep. I brewed tea after tea, my hands trembling as I replayed the past in my mind. Birthdays I planned, nights I stayed up while she studied, the time I sold my wedding ring just to pay her college deposit. I had done everything a mother could do. And somehow, I'd raised someone who thought love meant control, who couldn't stand seeing me shine. At dawn, I made my decision. I wasn't going to hide or disappear this time. No, I was going to rise higher. And I would do it in a way that no one, not even Ava, could twist or diminish. The next week, I reached out to a few women I'd met at my live event, entrepreneurs, widows, retirees who'd rebuilt their lives. I asked if they'd like to collaborate on something bigger than just videos. The idea came to me in one clear flash, the Second Bloom Project. A foundation that would help women over 50 learn digital skills, share their stories, and regain financial independence. I would use my platform, my growing visibility, and every ounce of strength I had to make it real. Within days, I had a team of volunteers. We worked out of my living room at first, huddled around laptops, planning workshops, outreach programs, and mentorship sessions. It was exhausting, but it gave me purpose. The project grew faster than I expected. Local news covered it, women signed up from neighboring towns, and donations began trickling in. And for every person who joined, I saw a reflection of myself, women who had been told they were too old, too tired, too late. Each one of them carried a spark inside, waiting for someone to remind them that they still mattered. 2 months later, on a bright Saturday afternoon, I was helping set up for one of our events when I heard someone call my name. "Mom!" I turned, surprised, and there she was. Ava stood by the doorway, wearing a beige blazer and holding a bouquet of lilies. Her expression was careful, hesitant. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded, though my stomach twisted with unease. She followed me into the back room, away from the volunteers. "I heard about this project," she said, glancing around. "It's impressive. Thank you." She exhaled. "Look, I came to apologize. Again. I know you probably hate me after what happened, but I truly didn't mean for that video to go public. It was stupid. I was stupid." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I saw the exhaustion behind her flawless appearance. Her eyes were tired, her tone softer. "I don't hate you, Ava," I said gently. "I'm just disappointed. I thought we had found our way back to each other." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. And I ruined it again. But, Mom," seeing all this, she gestured to the posters on the wall, the laughter outside. "You're incredible. I didn't know you had this in you. A small smile tugged at my lips. Neither did I. Not until I stopped listening to the voice that told me I wasn't enough. She swallowed hard. Can I help? I want to. I mean it this time. Part of me wanted to say no. To protect myself. But another part, the mother in me, wanted to believe she meant it. So I said yes. She began helping part-time, organizing events, handling social media, talking to donors. And for the first time in years, we worked side by side, almost like a team. The volunteers adored her. She was charming, confident, articulate, all the things I used to be afraid I wasn't. But then, something started to feel off. It began subtly. Ava would take over during meetings, speaking on my behalf. Mom gets nervous in front of big groups, she'd say with a laugh, brushing me aside like a child. Then she started introducing herself as the co-founder of the Second Bloom project. At first, I ignored it. Maybe she just wanted to feel involved. But soon, I noticed she was changing things, rebranding our website, rewriting our story to make it sound like her idea. My stomach sank when I saw a new interview online. The headline read, "Young Entrepreneur Empowers Older Women Through Social Upliftment." And beneath it was Ava's face, smiling, confident, polished. I watched the entire segment, waiting for her to mention me. Waiting for even one word. She didn't. Not once. That night, I sat in the dark, listening to the ticking clock. I could have confronted her immediately. But something told me to wait to see how far she'd go. And she went far. Within weeks, she'd created new partnerships under her own name, redirected donations to a new account she controlled, and even spoke at a corporate event using my speech. The final blow came when I received an email from our biggest sponsor, informing me that they'd decided to continue working directly with Ava Daniels as the face of the Second Bloom project. My heart dropped. She had taken everything, my work, my vision, my name. I tried calling her. She didn't answer. The next day, she sent me a text. "Mom, please don't be upset. This is what's best for the organization. I can take it further than you can. Trust me." Trust her. The same daughter who'd once called me old and pathetic had now stolen the only thing I'd built to prove I wasn't. That night, I cried harder than I ever had. Not from weakness, from rage. For 60 years, I'd been the woman who forgave, who understood, who endured. But not this time. Something inside me shifted. A calm, fierce clarity. If Ava wanted to see what her pathetic old mother could do, I'd show her in a way she'd never forget. I spent the next few days quietly collecting evidence, emails, contracts, original registrations of my foundation, the first trademark filings. Thankfully, I had filed all the paperwork under my name before Ava joined. Once I had everything, I contacted a lawyer, a woman my age who'd attended one of my workshops. When I told her the story, she looked at me and said, "Don't worry. We'll handle this with grace and power." I smiled for the first time in days. A month later, Ava stood on stage at a prestigious charity gala, speaking about her foundation. The room was full of business leaders, journalists, and cameras flashing from every corner. I stood at the back, unnoticed, wearing a simple black dress. She spoke confidently, her voice steady. The Second Bloom project was born out of my desire to help older women rediscover purpose. That's when the large LED screen behind her flickered, and suddenly, the display changed. Images began to roll, photos of me from the earliest workshops, my handwritten mission statement, and clips of me speaking at the first live event long before Ava joined. Then came a video of me, explaining my vision in my own words. This project isn't about age. It's about rediscovery. About remembering that even when life forgets us, we can still bloom again. The audience went silent. Then, slowly, a murmur rippled through the crowd. The host, visibly confused, stepped up to the microphone. It appears we have a correction to make." And that's when my lawyer, seated beside a few journalists, handed out press packets confirming that the Second Bloom project was registered solely under my name. Ava froze on stage. I could see the color drain from her face. Her voice trembled. I think there's been a misunderstanding, but the audience had already begun whispering. Cameras flashed. Questions were shouted. I walked forward, calm and steady, until I stood beside her. "There's no misunderstanding," I said softly into the mic. "I created the Second Bloom project. My daughter helped for a short while, and I'm grateful for that. But this dream began in my heart long before anyone believed in it." A hush fell over the room. Ava looked at me, eyes wide and glistening. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The host nodded awkwardly and led her off stage as applause began to build, hesitant at first, then louder, rising like a wave. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, letting the sound wash over me. Because that moment wasn't revenge, it was justice. The next morning, headlines exploded across social media. Mother exposes daughter's betrayal at charity gala, the internet applauds her grace. Old and pathetic no more, 60-year-old woman becomes symbol of resilience. My following tripled overnight. Women from around the world wrote to me, calling me Mama Bloom, thanking me for showing that strength and forgiveness could coexist. But Ava, she disappeared for weeks. When she finally called, her voice was small, broken. "Mom, I lost everything. My job, my fiancé, my reputation. I know I deserve it, but I don't know how to fix this." For a long moment, I said nothing. Then, quietly, I replied, "You can start by learning what humility means. And when you do, I'll be here." She cried softly. "You still want me in your life? After everything?" I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my cheeks. A mother always wants her child. But she also deserves peace. Months passed. The project grew internationally. We opened new chapters in 3 countries. My book was adapted into a documentary. I traveled, spoke at conferences, and mentored women who reminded me of myself at my lowest. And one afternoon, while I was tending to my roses, the same garden where I had once cried in silence, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Need help with the pruning?" I turned. Ava stood there, holding gardening gloves, her eyes filled with humility I hadn't seen before. "I came to learn," she said. "Not to take. Just to learn." I handed her a pair of shears. "Then start with the thorns," I said with a small smile. She knelt beside me, and for the first time in years. We worked together in silence, not as mother and daughter fighting for control, but as 2 women, side by side, both learning to grow again. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ava turned to me and said, "You were right, Mom. You're not old or pathetic. You're powerful." I smiled gently. "No, sweetheart. I'm just finally free." It's strange how time softens even the hardest edges of pain. A year has passed since that night on the gala stage, the night I reclaimed my name, my voice, and my worth. So much has changed. The Second Bloom project now thrives in 5 countries. Every week, I speak to women who've lost hope, who think life has passed them by. They tell me how they found courage in my story, not because I'm special, but because I was broken and still stood back up. And Ava has changed too. Slowly, carefully, like a wounded bird learning to fly again. After her public fall, she left the city for a while. I didn't hear from her often, but sometimes she'd send messages, updates about the small bakery she started with a friend, photos of her volunteering at a youth shelter. Each message carried a different tone, humble, real, stripped of the arrogance that once wrapped around her like armor. And then, one morning, she came home. It was a crisp Saturday. I was watering the garden when I saw her car pull up. She stepped out, carrying a small suitcase and a nervous smile. "Hey, Mom," she said softly. I set down the watering can, my heart fluttering between joy and caution. "You came." "I missed home," she said simply. She looked different, lighter somehow. No makeup, no designer clothes, just a plain dress and weary eyes that spoke of lessons learned. Inside, we sat at the same dining table where so many arguments had happened. But this time, there was no tension. Only silence, the good kind, the kind that holds peace instead of anger. "I owe you more than an apology," she said finally. "When I called you old and pathetic, I was angry. Not at you, at myself. I thought your happiness made me small, like I was losing control. But now I see you are just living. Tears stung my eyes. Ava, I never wanted to take anything from you. I just wanted to remind you that life doesn't stop, not for age, not for failure, not for pain. She nodded, swallowing hard. You did. You reminded me too. That's why I'm here. I want to help again, not to lead, not to be seen. Just to give back. Her words were soft, but they carried weight. Sincerity I hadn't heard in years. Then start where I did, I said gently. With the people no one listens to. Help them tell their stories. She smiled faintly. I'd like that. Over the next few months, Ava began working quietly at the foundation again, not as a co-founder, not as a face, but as a mentor. She taught communication to older women who wanted to rebuild careers. I watched her interact with them, patient, humble, even gentle. One day, after a workshop, I overheard her say to a woman struggling to read her notes, "It's okay. My mom taught me to start over too." That moment broke me in the most beautiful way. Healing, I realized, isn't loud. It's not about grand gestures or public apologies. It's found in small acts of kindness, in quiet moments where love begins to speak again. Slowly, Ava and I began to find each other not in the shadow of the past, but in the light of who we were becoming. When a film company approached me about making a documentary on my journey, I hesitated. I wasn't sure I wanted to open old wounds again. But Ava was the one who convinced me. "Mom," she said gently, "this isn't about reliving pain. It's about showing people what healing looks like. And maybe it's our story now too." Her words caught me off guard, our story. So I agreed. The filming took months, long days of interviews, revisiting old places, sharing memories I had buried deep. But it was cathartic. And for the first time, Ava sat beside me in front of the cameras, not as the daughter who betrayed me, but as the woman who stood beside me, owning her mistakes with grace. During one scene, the interviewer asked Ava, "What was it like watching your mother rise when the world expected her to fade?" Ava's eyes glistened. It was terrifying at first. Because I thought her strength meant I had failed. But now I see, she wasn't rising above me. She was showing me the way. I turned to her then, tears running freely. For the first time, the ache in my chest loosened. That night, when we got home, Ava hugged me, really hugged me, and whispered, "Thank you for never giving up on me." Months later, the documentary premiered at a small theater downtown. The title read, "Still Blooming, A Mother's Rebirth." I didn't expect much fanfare. But as the lights dimmed and the film began, I could feel the audience's emotion ripple through the room, laughter, tears, applause. When the credits rolled, people stood up. The applause thundered, and I felt overwhelmed. But the moment that mattered most wasn't the clapping or the praise, it was when Ava reached over, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mom." For the first time, she said it with no bitterness, no guilt, just truth. I turned to her, smiling through tears. "And I'm proud of who you're becoming." Weeks later, as I was cleaning my desk, I found an old notebook, one I used during my early days of posting videos. Tucked inside was a note in my own handwriting, dated years ago. When Ava called me old and pathetic today, I thought maybe she was right. Maybe my time had passed. But something inside me refuses to die. I don't know what's next, but I'll keep going. Maybe one day, she'll see me differently. I smiled through tears as I read it. Because she had seen me differently. The woman who once mocked my efforts now stood beside me, helping others bloom. And I realized the story was never really about revenge or proving her wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was never finished. That there was still more life to live, more love to give, more beauty to create. The following spring, we held our largest event yet, a conference with over 500 women from across the continent. Ava handled logistics, and I was set to close the ceremony with a short speech. As I stood backstage, I saw her pacing nervously with a microphone. "Mom," she said, rushing to me, "can I say something before you do?" I nodded. She walked on stage, her voice steady but emotional. A year ago, I stood on a stage like this one, but back then, I was full of pride and fear. I tried to take something that wasn't mine because I thought power meant control. But now, I know that true power comes from grace, and from admitting when you've been wrong. The crowd was silent, listening. My mother taught me that, she continued. The woman who the world once called old and pathetic taught me what real strength looks like. She taught me that even the deepest cracks can bloom again. Her voice broke, and she turned toward me, tears in her eyes. Mom, please come up here. The audience erupted in applause as I joined her on stage. She handed me the microphone, but I didn't speak right away. I simply hugged her, the hug we both needed years ago. When the crowd quieted, I said softly, age doesn't make you invisible. Mistakes don't make you worthless. What makes you truly old is giving up on yourself, and none of us are doing that anymore. The room thundered with applause, women rising to their feet, some crying openly. In that moment, I realized something. My story, our story, wasn't just about survival. It was about rebirth. That night, after everyone had gone, Ava and I sat under the twinkling lights of the empty hall. Mom, she said, her head resting on my shoulder, I used to be afraid of becoming you. I smiled softly. And now? Now I hope I do. I looked at her, my daughter, my reflection, my once greatest pain, now my greatest pride. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of peace. And as I looked out at the empty stage, the same stage that once symbolized betrayal, I realized that life has a way of mending what seems impossible. We can't change the past. But we can bloom again, even in the soil of our scars. Months later, the Second Bloom project reached its millionth follower online. A journalist asked me during an interview, "What do you think when you look back to that moment your daughter called you old and pathetic?" I smiled gently and replied, "I think she gave me a gift." Because sometimes, it takes being broken by the ones we love to find the strength to rebuild ourselves. I paused, glancing at Ava, who was managing the event in the background, laughing, radiant, whole. And now, I continued, we build together. That evening, as the sun set over the same garden where my tears once fell, Ava and I sat quietly, surrounded by blooming roses. Mom, she said softly, thank you for never giving up on your dreams, or on me. I reached over, holding her hand. Dreams are just seeds, Ava. Sometimes, they take years to grow. But when they finally bloom, she finished the sentence for me, smiling through tears. They're worth every season of waiting. We sat in silence, watching the last rays of light fade behind the horizon. The air smelled of jasmine and renewal. And in that stillness, I knew I wasn't old. I wasn't pathetic. I was alive. I was blooming. And I was finally free.